Here's something that will mess with your head. In 2019, a man named Derek Calloway was featured in Forbes as one of the most promising young entrepreneurs in the Pacific Northwest. His company had just crossed $1 million in annual revenue. He had a wait list of clients, a team of 11 people, a sleek office in Austin, Texas, with his logo on the door. 18 months later, he couldn't make payroll. Not because business slowed down, not because he lost clients, not because the economy tanked. His business was busier than ever. So why was Derek sitting in his car outside a Chase Bank, calling his accountant with shaking hands, asking how $1 million company runs out of money? The answer will change the way you think about business forever. And chances are, no one ever told you this in school, in a business course, or in any of those entrepreneurship books collecting dust on your shelf. What looks like a simple business story is actually 5 warnings about money and business that most people miss until their business is already in trouble. Derek Calloway grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Middle-class family, engineer father, schoolteacher mother. He wasn't the kid who read Rich Dad, Poor Dad at 14 or built apps in his garage. He was just sharp, observant, and wired to create things. After studying marketing at Ohio State, Derek spent 5 years grinding through agency jobs in Chicago before landing in Austin during the city's tech boom. He worked at a mid-sized digital marketing agency, learned the game from the inside, and at 29, made the decision that millions of Americans dream about, but only a fraction execute. He quit and started his own shop, Calloway Creative, a boutique digital marketing agency focused on e-commerce brands. The early days were the grind everyone romanticizes on LinkedIn. Derek working from a coffee shop on South Congress Avenue, cold emailing 40 brands a day, closing his first client for $2,500 a month, then his second, then his third. He was good at what he did, really good. By the end of year 2, Calloway Creative had 12 clients, a small team, and revenues flirting with $80,000 a month. Derek was getting speaking invitations, podcast requests. The Forbes feature came through a connection at a local startup conference. From the outside, it looked like a rocket ship. From the inside, something was quietly, invisibly wrong. But Derek had no idea, because he'd told himself a story that millions of business owners tell themselves every single day. I'm creative. I'm not a finance person. Here's where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Calloway Creative operated on retainer contracts. Clients paid monthly for ongoing services. Clean, predictable, beautiful, on paper. But Derek had a habit. When a big client came knocking, a real one, the kind with a recognizable name and a 6-figure budget, he would do what ambitious entrepreneurs do. He said yes, immediately, aggressively. In the spring of 2019, he landed the contract that felt like validation of everything. A direct-to-consumer fitness brand out of Denver, let's call them Iron Path, signed a $40,000 a month deal with Calloway Creative. 6-month contract. Deliverables are heavy, reporting intensive. Derek's team celebrated. He bought everyone dinner at Uchiko, posted something cryptic but exciting on LinkedIn. Life was good. What Derek didn't scrutinize, because he wasn't a finance person, was the payment terms buried in the contract. Iron Path would pay net 60. That means 60 days after services were rendered. Derek's brain, wired for creativity and momentum, barely registered it. We'll get paid, it'll be fine. He onboarded Iron Path immediately, hired 2 additional specialists, expanded his office lease, ordered new equipment. The cash register in his head was ringing. The actual cash in his bank account? It was standing very, very still. Here's where it starts to get painful. To service Iron Path and his growing roster, Derek had to pay his team. Every 2 weeks, payroll didn't operate on net 60. His employees had rent due on the 1st. They had car payments and student loans and grocery bills. He also had vendors, a software platform, a freelance video team in LA, a data analytics contractor. None of them waited 60 days. So Derek did what stressed entrepreneurs do when cash feels tight, but the business feels healthy. He used his business line of credit. Just to bridge the gap, he told himself. The money's coming. Iron Path pays in 60 days. I'll pay it right back. Then, 3 weeks into the Iron Path contract, a second large client approached him. Same scenario. Big name, big budget. Net 45 payment terms. Derek said yes. More hires, more overhead, more promises. The business looked extraordinary on a revenue spreadsheet. Anyone glancing at the numbers would have said, "This guy's crushing it." But underneath the surface, Derek had built a beautiful machine that was slowly suffocating. His receivables, money he was owed, were climbing toward $180,000. His bank account at one point had less than $12,000 in it. He was financing a $1 million business on a shoestring of actual cash, bridging every gap with credit, and praying that invoices would clear before the next expense cycle hit. He started losing sleep, not because clients were unhappy, not because the work was suffering, because every Monday morning he opened his banking app before he opened his email, and what he saw made his stomach drop. His business was profitable on paper. It was dying in real life. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in November 2020. Derek had payroll due Friday, $68,000 for his team of 11. IronPath's payment, 60 days past the invoice date, still hadn't been cleared. His credit line was maxed. His personal savings, which he'd quietly started dipping into 3 months prior, were nearly gone. He called his accountant, a sharp woman named Sylvia Chen, who'd been gently raising red flags for months that Derek had professionally nodded at and promptly ignored. "Sylvia," he said, sitting in his car outside the bank, "I don't understand. We're making more money than we've ever made. How is this happening?" There was a pause on the line. Then Sylvia said something that Derek later described as the most clarifying and most humbling moment of his professional life. "Derek, you've been running your business like a marketer. You've been tracking revenue. You should have been running it like a business owner, tracking cash. Those are two completely different numbers, and you've been celebrating the wrong one." She walked him through it plainly. Profit is the difference between what you earn and what you spend. It's a concept. It's a line on a report. It tells you if your business model works. Cash flow is the heartbeat. It's the actual dollars moving in and out of your account on actual days. It tells you if your business survives. A business can be wildly profitable on paper and still be dead in the water if the cash isn't there when the bills arrive. Derek had been so focused on landing clients, growing revenue, and building the brand, all legitimate things, that he'd completely abdicated the financial operating system of his business to not being a finance guy. And that abdication had nearly cost him everything. Here's the part of the story that Derek says haunts him most. When he finally sat down with Sylvia and went through the full picture, the diagnosis wasn't complicated. It didn't require an MBA. It didn't require advanced accounting. It required two things. First, a clear, honest look at whether the business was actually generating more money than it was spending. Real profit, not just revenue. Was the pricing right? Were the margins healthy after labor, software, overhead, and taxes? Were they growing profitably or just growing? When they ran the numbers honestly, including all the costs Derek had mentally categorized as temporary or investment, the margins were tighter than he'd admitted to himself. Not disastrous, but not the cushion he'd imagined. Second, a simple weekly discipline of tracking cash. What was coming in, what was going out, and when. Not monthly, not quarterly, weekly. Because cash doesn't wait for your quarterly review. What Derek discovered was that 2 of his contracts had payment terms that were slowly strangling him. A renegotiation with IronPath, offering a 2% early payment discount in exchange for net 30 terms, was accepted immediately. The Denver team hadn't even pushed back. They just needed to be asked. He created a simple cash flow projection spreadsheet. Not sophisticated, not automated. A spreadsheet that showed him, 13 weeks into the future, what cash was expected in and what was guaranteed to go out. It took Sylvia 4 hours to build it. 4 hours. Derek later said that spreadsheet was worth more than any marketing strategy, any client pitch, any Forbes feature, because it meant he could see. And a business owner who can see, really see, the financial health of what they've built is operating on a completely different level than one who can't. He restructured, he renegotiated. He shed 2 clients whose contracts were cash flow negative in the short term. He rebuilt the team slightly leaner, with more freelancers and fewer full-time salaries in the early stages of new contracts. Calloway Creative didn't collapse, it evolved. By the end of 2021, revenue was at $1.3 million, but this time, the bank account reflected it. Monthly cash reserves sat at 3 times the operating costs. Derek slept on Sundays again, and he stopped calling himself a non-finance person because he realized, with the kind of clarity that only near disaster delivers, that was never an identity. It was an excuse, a quiet, socially acceptable way of opting out of the most fundamental responsibility of running a business. Key lessons from this story. 1. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity. Cash flow is reality. Every business owner needs to understand all three, not just the one that looks best in a pitch deck. 2. I'm not a finance person is not a personality trait. It's a liability. You don't need to be an accountant, but you need to understand whether your business makes money and whether cash is actually present when obligations arrive. Delegating execution is smart. Delegating understanding is dangerous. 3. Profitable and cash flow positive are not the same thing. A business can fail while being profitable. Net 60 payment terms, rapid scaling, and rising overhead can create a cash gap that swallows healthy companies whole. Know your terms. Negotiate your terms. Model your terms. 4. Cash flow visibility is a weekly discipline, not a quarterly event. A simple 13-week cash flow projection, what's coming in, what's going out, gives you the foresight to act before a crisis, not during one. 5. The 2 pillars hold up everything else. Marketing, branding, culture, talent, innovation. All of it matters. But none of it survives without the foundation, the ability to generate real profit and the discipline to manage real cash. These aren't CFO problems. They're owner problems. Always. Derek's story isn't unusual. Versions of it happen every day in restaurants, agencies, construction firms, gyms, and startups across America. Often to smart, talented people who simply never looked squarely at these 2 pillars. If you're drawn to stories that sit at the intersection of business, psychology, and the decisions that quietly determine who makes it and who doesn't, this channel is built for that kind of thinking. People who think this way tend to find a lot of value here. If that's you, subscribing takes 1 second and costs nothing. See you in the next one.